What would you say is the biggest piece of advice to make that leap? Because I think everybody who gets into real estate goes into it hoping that they can scale into multifamily.
Look, you just used the magic word, hope. Hope is not a business strategy. It's not. Everyone that I've ever coached, Garret, I always say to them, there is something special about you. There's a skill set. I don't care whether you're 18 or 68. And this is ridiculous to state, but it's true. 99% of the people I ask them, what do you want? And what skills do you have? They can't answer it, man.
I want to be a millionaire in 6 weeks.
No, stupid. You can't fix stupid, right? What most people really want is some freedom from worry, from fear, from insecurity, from, lack of value. And if we can figure out what those things are, let's reverse engineer into that.
I'm Garret Wong, and this is the Investing to Win podcast. How do you define success, and what does winning look like for you? Dave, thanks for being on my podcast today.
All right, thanks for having me. That nice little hi, how are you? It's beautiful. I'm here for you, man.
No. So why don't we, before, I know we were laughing because we were chatting in the green room just before I hit the record button, but for the benefit of the audience, why don't you give a short intro about yourself?
Yeah, I'm not good at giving short intros, but I'll do the best I can.
Do your best.
Guy said to me one time, he said, "You know what your favorite subject is?" I said, "What's that?" He said, "You." I said, "I don't know, take that as a compliment or an insult, right?"
Yeah.
So there's a fine line between ego and service. So I'll try and give a little service in the story rather than being ego oriented. I'm a pretty simple guy, Garret. I'm from England originally. I was born in London. I grew up in the south of England. I emigrated to the States back in 1986, just a young guy. I'm a product of a blue-collar background. The only advice my parents gave me was not bad advice. It just was the advice that was given to them, which was, you work hard, you trade time for money, you don't lie, you don't cheat, you don't steal. Do the right thing, son, is what my dad used to say to me. And, I followed that plan. And long story short, with that kind of undercurrent for success, if you will, and I use that tongue in cheek, there doesn't come any financial literacy with that kind of philosophy. And, I paid a price for that. I was blessed to be a firefighter and a paramedic here in the States, just north of Boston, 16 years on that job. But during that period of time, I learned that MasterCard and Visa were my very, very best of friends. They allowed me to keep up with the Joneses. And you'll appreciate this, being of the Canadian mindset, because it's very similar to the English mindset, the United Kingdom mindset, is that you can only spend as much as you earn. Well, here in the United States of America, that philosophy doesn't always apply. You know what I mean? It's the Wild West. And I found myself in about $75,000 in unsecured credit card debt, buying cars, boats, and leather coats, keeping up with the Joneses. And it was during the crash period, so real estate had lost, excuse me, a ton of its value. My house was actually in pre-foreclosure. I was losing everything, and I needed to make some decisions. And I was one of those guys in the firehouse that would watch the construction shows, on our downtime,
Yeah.
flipping houses and construction shows. And I went one day. Anyway, I was sitting in my pickup truck, screaming and shouting at my God, like, what's up, man? I've don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal. That's what my father told me. And yet everything is turned into crap. And I turned on the radio, and there was a commercial on there. Teach me foreclosure, a free 1.5-hour seminar coming to your neck of the woods. And I'm like, is this divine intervention? Is this where I take that leap of faith? And I did. I ran home to my wife, drove home to my wife, Mary Beth, and I said, I've got it. We're going to be real estate investors. She's like, you're out of your trees. She said, you're crazy. She said, we've got no money. We're losing our house, and you're going to be a real estate investor and an entrepreneur. And we invested the last $27,000 that was available to us as a family to get educated. And I implemented the education. So that's how real estate started in my life. So it was a blessing because it pushed me. What I did that day was I purchased $27,000 worth of accountability. And I think that's a dirty word in a lot of societies today. So
All right. Wow. So much to unpack there.
There's a lot there, huh?
Yeah. You know what? Let me back up a little bit. So you
Yeah.
mentioned the crash. Are we talking like 07, 08, or is this
Yeah.
prior?
Yeah. Yeah. No, oh
Okay.
seven, oh eight. So, I was definitely a victim of the subprime lending. A lot of predators, brother. A lot of predators in the marketplace back then. And, I got to see a lot of friends and associates just get hurt. And then I got educated and I became one of the most prominent short sale, loan modification, distressed asset investors in my region. So it was almost like I could identify with these people and really resonate with the pain of
Well, sure.
ignorance, to be frank, right? I could
Yeah.
resonate with the pain of ignorance because I was a victim and then became a victor of the circumstances, due to what I had learned. So yeah.
Something you said resonates with me with my origin story because my dad used to say to me, be a good person. It's okay. What goes around comes around. Right. And he had bad business partners. He got taken advantage of. He always had a smile on his face. And so that's where you think that story ends, but it doesn't because he passed away at 59 years old of cancer when I was 29 years old. And then I'm thinking, where's the justice in that? Do nice guys truly finish last? Where's the what goes around comes around, right? So, I
That's
think
hard.
that was my wake up call to say I need to take charge of my life. And I mean, I like to think I'm a nice guy, but
Yeah.
no, you have to do something for your education to break out. You have to have
Yeah.
that desire.
My It's funny you mentioned fathers, right? Every son, I think, wants to emulate their father, right? And every father just wants the respect of a son.
Yeah.
And I I had my father actually visiting from England a few years back after the TV show and everything, and things had changed dramatically. The financial landscape was different. And I never forget my dad. We're walking from this restaurant in Texas back to the hotel, and a couple of people have recognized me from the TV show. And remember, I'm just a kid, a working class kid from the south of England, right? I'm not Superman. And my dad looks at me and he says, "What is it you do over here in America, David?" I go, "Why are you asking, Dad?" He goes, "You're not a drug dealer, are you?" I go, I go, "No, Dad, I'm not a drug dealer." I said, "I'm in real estate. I teach it. I show other people how to do it. I mentor, I coach, I do deals." I said, "I'm able to create a good living that, flew you over first class and you get to stay with us and meet my boys and blah, 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 blah." And he says, "I don't understand what you're doing, David, but keep on doing it, boy. I love you." And it's those moments, right? It's
Yeah.
those moments, man.
Yeah.
Like you reflect
Yeah.
on your father. What comes around goes around. Well,
Yeah.
don't ever, whoever listens to us today, Garrett, and look, we just met, but I already know, we're cut from the same cloth. Don't ever lose your integrity on this journey.
Yeah.
Don't let your pride and your ego and your accomplishments separate you from God and man. Because you've probably seen it as well, right? We got these ballers, and it's all about the money and all of
Oh,
that silliness. It's like
yeah.
it
The
drives you
Instagram
crazy.
warriors. Yeah. Yeah. All
Yeah,
the
yeah,
billionaires that are making money on Instagram. Yeah. It's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah. It's nuts. Yeah, it's nuts. No, I resonate with you, brother, for sure.
Yeah, no, you know what? I heard first, I mean, we're in the green room, so I'm like, okay, I hear an accent there. Then I'm like, I hear a bit of Boston in there.
Yeah,
I hear a bit of
yeah,
England, but I wasn't quite sure. But to
yeah,
hear you imitate your dad like perfectly, like
yeah,
that's
yeah.
awesome.
It's funny. I'm married a couple of times. I have a 30-year-old son who just got married. I have a 15-year-old and a 13-year-old son. So I'm trying to get a nice soccer team going. But I loaded the whole Seymour crew about a year and a half, 2 years ago now. Loaded them all up, and we surprised my father on his 80th birthday. And he didn't know we were coming. My stepsister had put a big old bash on. And as soon as I as soon as I land in England and as soon as I spend time with my family, my wife and my boys both look at me and they go, "We don't understand a word you're saying." What are you talking about?
Yeah,
Because
you need
it
the
falls,
subtitles. Yeah.
yeah, you fall into that cadence, right? You fall into the history of who you are and where you came from. So it didn't take long.
Well, it's interesting. not to go too far off topic, but my wife is a
Yep.
nurse and
Okay.
early in her
So's mine.
career.
So's
Oh,
mine.
wow. Well, there you
Yeah.
go. Meant to be.
Like
Um,
labor and delivery nurse. That's crazy.
yeah. So she, in her mid 20s, decided that she'd had enough of Canada, went over to the UK and
Huh.
actually nursed in England. I think she was in Reading and she also went to Oxford. And then when she came back, we met. But what's interesting is she emulates accents as well. And as soon as she's with somebody from the UK, I can hear the twang coming on. I'm like,
Sure.
what?
Who are you?
Where does that
Who
come
are
from?
you?
Like,
It's
what?
like it's like cheating on your wife. I'm going to be with an English girl tonight.
Yeah.
That's so cool. That's,
Yeah.
that's like when my wife gets a new haircut. I say, "Hey, how you doing, honey?" You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's, yeah, it's
so,
interesting.
so you came over in 1986. What were you doing in England before you came over? Like, what skills did you learn, or what were you doing in
None,
school? Or
none. Look, man, you're going to the core of me. So in
hey,
January of 1990, I drank my last drink. I've been sober for 35 years. So up until that period of time, it was pretty chaotic. It was pretty nuts. There was a lot of attempts at life that failed miserably because of my own addictive personalities. So, what skills did I learn? That's such a great question. I was actually in college in London, and I auditioned for a performing arts college. I wanted to be somebody. I always wanted to be somebody other than me for some reason, and it was that was it. That was my collegiate career, really. I did 1 year of a 3-year performing arts. That's Shakespeare and theater and all of that silliness. What's interesting is that the ability to read a room, the ability to relate and resonate with somebody, I think that's an inert skill. I don't know that you can necessarily teach it. You may be able to develop it in somebody, but like that ability in the theatrical sense to be able to bring some of that emotion into a sales call, into a capital raising call, into this conversation. Look, you're a podcaster. I've done some as well. Sometimes it's like pulling teeth trying to get a conversation with somebody, right? But when you have an element of confidence in your own skin, like I can live in this skin and be okay. Other people's opinions of me are none of my business. I'm okay, right? Then we can have some conversation. But that theater background, I think, was a skill set that was stifled for a long time, and it wasn't until I got sober, I got a career, and I got involved, and I learned that some of those skills, came to the forefront. But I don't know, man. I wasn't a carpenter. I wasn't an educated individual. I got kicked out of every school I think I ever attended in some degree or another.
so yeah, for me, I was disappointed my parents. You talk about dropping out of school and stuff. A PhD dropout, 6 months away from graduating, and so
Really?
I think, ah, you know what? I always say that it's our past experiences and failures that shape us who we are today. It doesn't matter
For
what it
sure.
is, and you can draw from anything, right? So, what I read from your ability to, what you said, read the room, is what my business coach calls situational awareness. And
Same
walking
thing.
into a situation and knowing whether you should crack a joke or whether it's serious or relate to
Mm,
somebody, or it's
mm.
just not the right time to broach the subject of capital raising, right? I mean,
Right, right, right.
it's a skill. It is.
Sure, sure it is. Yeah, it's I did there was a coming to Jesus call that needed to occur a couple of weeks ago. And to your point, I didn't need to read that room. I knew what I was walking into, right? So the opening line from me, the CEO, was, okay, guys, we're going to skip all the pleasantries today. I don't care about your weather. You don't care about mine. I don't care about each other's soccer teams, football teams, hockey teams. We have an issue. We need to address it. We need to address it now and come out with some resolution. So in an opening line like that, you set a precedent of what it is that you want to achieve, right? It's almost like
Yep.
okay, for this call, we're going to do this, 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 and this. So situational awareness, reading the room, they're all skill sets that need developed. You said something. We're a product of our past. In to be concise with the way you phrased it, and I think for me, there's a lot more value, and maybe people don't want to hear this. I don't really care whether they want to hear it or not. I personally believe there's a lot more value in failure than there is in
Oh,
success. And
100%. No,
people don't want to. I don't know. Is it generational? Is it I want a
it's pride.
shortcut?
It's pride.
Pride.
I don't know. If anybody, look, if you interview anybody, and I've interviewed a lot of successful people, if anybody ever
Yeah.
told me I made it to where I am because I didn't have any failure, they're lying. I
Yeah.
mean,
They're
everybody,
full of it. Yeah.
yeah, there's no way. I don't care
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
context it is. So, walk me through the early days because I love this. The buying of that first rental property. What was it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
how did
Yeah.
you? What was that like?
Yeah, look, I'm in the firehouse. I am studying like crazy. My online education and the couple of classes that I invested in, and a coach and all of that stuff. It was interesting because there became a separation between my brothers and me in the firehouse. Right, I'm doing
Yep.
something different. It's like, what's going on there? Dave's not hanging with us anymore. He's up in his room doing X, Y, Z when we're not working. Either a fire or training or whatever. But anyway.
Right.
Um, I made a lot of offers during the crash, and I learned how to wholesale, which is a strategy we can use in the States where we control a piece of real estate with a contract.
Sure.
And everybody said you cannot wholesale bank owned properties during the crash. But because I was mentored by the right people, I learned there are certain trust agreements that you can use that have a beneficiary of a trust. And I'm not going to get into all of it, but I learned that there's power in paperwork and the pen. There's power in paperwork and the pen. And I put a piece of real estate under contract for $30,000. It was a bank owned property that had been refinanced by the prior owner. I think it was for $375,000. And
Ooh,
I got it under contract for 30 grand. That's how bad it was back then.
that
But
redefines the concept of upside down. My
yeah,
goodness.
yeah, it was
Wow.
nuts. The pigeons had got in there, the gangbangers had got in there. The place was a horror show. And I wholesaled that paper with a trust to another investor for 70,000, I think it was. So I made like 30 grand or something like that after I paid the other guy and blah, blah, blah. And I remember thinking to myself, how much time has it taken me to earn that 30,000 in comparison to the hours of overtime that I was trading in a firehouse, my second job, my third job. And that set a catalyst because what happened that day was nobody could ever tell me I couldn't do something ever again because I did it. I had a check to prove it. I built the relationships to execute on it. And that started a momentum. And then as time traveled, one or two houses are flipped and you're making a larger check and you're getting a reputation. We do a lot of short sales, like I said, learning how to, work within the chaos that was the crash.
Yeah.
Nobody knew what a short sale was. Nobody knew what a REO was. I had a broker one time say to me, "What's REO? Real estate office?" I go, "No, honey, get back in your Mercedes and your high heel shoes. This isn't your business model anymore." You know what I mean? You could go, it was a different game. So you learn the rules of the game, making hay in the right season. And that led to a rental property. And that led to another rental property. I was a landlord, tenants, toilets, trash. I was a landlord in some of the toughest neighborhoods in the city that I worked as a firefighter. So for me, I didn't have the cultural or the community fear that a lot of people carry around landlording, right? Um, Winston Churchill says, "Walk softly, but carry a big stick." It's kind of how I operated back then. I did what I needed to do, but it sets up a momentum, and that momentum can either be exhausted by my efforts or it can be elevated by my efforts. So one of the things that we did very early on was we looked at every decision we were making and we said, "Is this a gain? Is this a positive, or is this going to be a draw? Is this going to be a negative? Whatever it was." Am I over my skis? Am I within my ability to execute? And then once you reach that barrier, then you push through that barrier. Right now, I'm going
Right.
to. So it started with a couple of duplexes and triplexes, or what we call two fams and three fams here in the Boston market, and pushed that up to about 150 doors. Not a huge portfolio, but I basically got into that portfolio no money down because I learned how to leverage my tax returns, um, put my money down on a tax return, buy them cash, and then refinance them out with the bank. If you buy them right and you can show them as an income producing asset, then you don't need to keep your own money in that deal. And then it's rinse and repeat. So that's how we got into the portfolio game, and it has progressed from there.
Wow, 150 doors. That is not nothing to sneeze at. That's for sure.
Hmm.
Um, Tell me about, and in context, where the flipping show came about, because that's really interesting to me.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of nuts, man. I was fresh out of my education classes, and they said, go find other investors in the marketplace. Now, when I started, the internet was okay, but it wasn't anywhere where it is today, right? So, you could go on Craigslist and you could go for, houses for sale on Craigslist and stuff like that. And that's where it started. I met this guy, Pete, who ended up being my partner on the TV show on Craigslist, and began to leverage my relationships in the city as a firefighter, plus my construction background. And he'd already been doing some flips and some builds in the marketplace. So that got the real estate moving in the right direction, plus the other things that I was doing. But what was it really interesting is when I got educated, the people who educated me noticed that I was doing what I had paid for, which I thought
Mm,
was what everybody did.
yeah,
The success rate in the seminar world is slim.
yeah,
Don't ever ask anybody that you write a check for $50,000 for education. Don't ask them what the success rate is, because they'll go, you know what I mean? They'll mumble and bumble. But I was part of that, maybe 10% that actually, that's probably aggressive. I was part of that 10% that actually did it.
yeah.
And they said to me, you've got some pretty good results and your story's kind of cool. Why don't you teach? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Teach? I'm a firefighter. I'm a bull in a china shop. I dig ditches. I don't have a Harvard education. I'm not from Yale. I'm not from jail either, but I don't have a Harvard education. How can I teach? I said, I feel fake. I don't want to be fake. They said, no, no, no. Listen. They said, you can be the reporter of somebody else's success. As long as what it is that you're reporting is truth, then go out and share it. Go out and share systems. And one of the first guys that I spoke for or taught for or closed for, or whatever term you want to give it, was a multifamily guy. And he had up to 7,000 units at the time. He's over 12,000 now. Local guy here in Boston. And that put me in a different sphere of influence that dramatically changed my life. Kid by the name of Russell Brunson. And if
Hmm.
you know anything about
Of
Russell
course.
Brunson, yeah, Russell Brunson was part of like a little crew that was hanging around the guys who educated me.
Really?
And it was
Okay.
before everybody was there. Gary Vaynerchuk was one of them. There was a couple of
Okay.
these internet surfer guys. Um, and Gary Vaynerchuk was still doing the wine review stuff back then.
Right.
Anyway, Russell Brunson sends a link out to a couple of folks that he knew. This was probably 2009, 10. And it was to interview for this or send in an application for this TV show. Nobody was doing flipping shows because the market was donkey, right? So Russell Brunson sends this email and he says, hey, Dave, you're a funny son of a gun. Love the firefighter stuff, blah, blah, blah. You should apply for this thing. And I'm like, who's going to pick me, right? But what I did was I used a technique which I don't endorse the way I did it. You figure your own way out. But if I got to separate myself from the pack, right, I got to do something different. And it was an online application, and I loaded it with profanity, Garrett, like massive amounts of profanity, like words that my grandmother would roll over in her grave if I ever used them out loud. And basically the whole essence of was don't waste my time. Get on a plane, train, or automobile from New York up to Boston. I'll show you how it's done. We go running in when everybody else goes running out, just like we do at the fire department. Don't wait. Don't call me, right? Don't call me. Send. And I hit send. I guess they were screening, but I get a call, a 212 New York area call. I pick up the phone. I go, I thought I told you not to call me, you a-hole. And I hung up the phone. And the kid calls back again, laughing his ass off. He says, you're either a lunatic or a genius. I said, what's the difference? And that's where it started, man. I mean, it was very loose at the beginning. We did a couple of episodes. We figured that was it, be all good. They wanted me to play the big burly contractor. My partner was the designer money guy. You fall into this BS.
Sure. Yeah.
And, we did 3 episodes. We got the highest rating in that time slot on a Saturday morning for A&E. Next thing you know, I got another 27 episodes I got to record. So off we went. That's how it
So,
started.
wow, profanity. Did they want you to incorporate that part of it, or was that they just understood that that was part of the audition and
Yeah,
the
look,
attention?
reality TV, people forget that the last word of reality TV is show. It's a show, okay?
Yeah.
Show. It all started, without getting too off in the weeds on it, it all started with Cops. Cops was like the first reality
Yeah.
experience that people had. And then that genre switched off into all of these crazy places. Your Kardashians and the Gadunks and Love Island, that island, sex, drugs, rock and roll, Billy the Bug Guy. You've got the rock and roll stars, right? So it's all that. So for us to be in that environment where I could stay somewhat authentic. They wanted the big burly. The notes were from A&E Network. They were, hey, that big English guy looks like he can get angry. We'd like to see some more of that. And then you got a production company that's making the episodes. So I played that part, and I played it very well. Now, did we really flip houses? Yeah. Were our numbers real? Yeah. My partner insisted on that, Pete. He said, we're not inflating this BS. We're not like spraying a wall and calling it stink house. We're in New England, as in parts of Canada, we got some pretty old inventory. So we really did make these old houses beautiful. But I'll tell you one story. The production company from New York, a guy says via an email or a call, I can't remember what it was. He says to me, I want you to rip up your GC, just verbally destroy him. I'm like, what? He goes, just do it. I go, no. He goes, I'll give you a couple of $100. Just, you can pay him. And I said to straight up, I said to the guy, I said, if you think I'm going to destroy this man's reputation on a TV show so that we can increase ratings, I said, you're deluded. You are absolutely deluded. I said, because flipping Boston will be a nothing burger at some point in the future.
Yep.
Nobody will know the show. Nobody will give a shit about the show. I said, and yet this guy is still trying to make a living. I said, so if you think I'm going to do that to this guy, you're out of your trees. But I promise you, I can make a pretty entertaining show if you want one. So stuff like that rubbed me the wrong way. And, over time, it ran its course. It was good. It was good. I had some fun. It's crazy. 1 minute I'm sitting in a firehouse and the next minute I'm with Joe Kiernan and Becky Quick on, on CNBC getting interviewed about the real estate market. So, I kept to wait for the hook to drag me off. Like, they're going to figure out
Right.
I'm just a firefighter, So yeah,
Yeah.
that's how we landed that stuff.
Wow. Stories. I just can't even imagine. I think people look at the reality TV and think
Mm,
that it's real, but I mean, there has to be a show or there wouldn't be a show.
sure,
I mean,
sure,
I
for
think
sure.
people have to realize that.
Yeah,
Um, you mentioned multifamily, and I now know that you've transitioned fairly heavily into multifamily.
yeah.
Tell me about, you alluded to it just before I asked you about the question on the show, but
Mm.
tell us how that really firmly took root in your mind and your business.
Yeah, look, there's for me there's a progression, okay? From if you're flipping houses for a living, fixing it up and selling it, it's still a job, right? There's no
Correct.
passive income off of that.
No.
You used to hear all the time, buy and hold, buy and hold, buy and hold. And I'd say like, yeah, but the money's tied up. Well, then you learn strategies outside of it. So going into pre-COVID, I was approached by a company out of California to brand some hard money lending around Dave and the TV show, brand out the hard money, get the money out on the streets. I got plenty of really good, strong borrowers. Um, and we started to do that. And we had about 15 million in loans coming through the pipe. And we were working off of a line of credit from a company in New York for 50 million. So basically the business model was get the loans written, get them out, rip them out, get them back, right? So that Wall Street was buying back this it's called non-QM, non-owner occupied notes, investor paper. And the business model was fantastic up until COVID hit and New York said, we're done. No more lending under these criteria. And we had to scrabble. I was out of business in like 24 hours, Garrett.
Yeah. Wow.
Luckily, I only had maybe 25, 30 grand invested into the business. But it was a tough time because there was a lot of, you start a business, you got the inspiration for it and everything else.
Right.
And I remember sitting down, licking my wounds for a while and having a realization that controlling the capital is key to everything, right? He who controls the gold makes the rules. Some gentleman from New York told me that one time. His name was Seth. Those that have the goals makes the rules. And I'm like, okay, I get it. And I connected with my now business partner, a gentleman by the name of Walter Novicki. Walter is my age. He's 60. I'm 58. So, we were in our mid 50s, early 50s. And I knew that Walter had done quite a lot of multifamily development work down in Southwest Florida, as well as his existing structures, what we call a repositioning, right? Increasing the net operating income value of an asset to increase its value. So you got these couple of old war horses telling stories and licking our wounds. And I'm like, what's next? He said, look, man, he said, I've been doing ones and twos my whole career. He said, how about let's blow it up and see if we can get some money coming in the door, some fund structures, and see what that looks like. So that's what really grew Freedom Venture Investments to what it is today, to be able to have these large developments, in development in Southwest Florida, 106 units. We're about to go into contract on about a 260 units, depending on density, with some commercial space as well. And then at the same time, we're always, looking to reposition existing assets. Low rents, tenant base is a little bit challenged. Some deferred maintenance. So that's how we went from where we were to where we are. Circumstances, dictate. See, a lot of people, they'll meet that kind of adversity, and they're either deer in the headlights, or they don't know how to pivot. And I think the ability to pivot in any situation is one of the key instruments to success, right? If it doesn't go the way you planned, what options are there? Do you have more than one exit strategy? So things of that nature is what brought us to where we are right now.
Yeah, no, to be able to pivot and change, I mean, that's what failures are supposed to teach us. I mean, if you don't learn from that, then shame on you type of thing.
Yeah.
So Southwest Florida, why there? I mean, you're in Boston. You say he's from California, or
Yeah, no, he's from Pittsburgh originally, but he's been in
okay,
Southwest Florida for over 30 years.
okay,
So it's interesting, right? When we get into large commercial multifamily assets and we get into development work, you really get away from the real estate and you become a data analyst.
yeah,
It's all in the data, and it makes my eyes bleed. Thank God I've got the right guys around me, because if that was all I did, I'd just kill myself. The data supports the business model and then the execution. So what do we look for? We look for job growth, rent growth, population growth.
sure,
Can I tick those boxes? Then I look at affordability index. Can people afford to buy a single family home instead of rent? If they can't afford to buy a single family home, what does the rental stock look like? What do they want? And what's interesting is Florida used to be, as we all know, it's God's waiting room, right? It's where you go before you go upstairs, right?
yeah,
So, that age demographic and income demographic was old people, low income. Well, that's changed so dramatically over the past 10 or 15 years that we see the median income ranges 70 to 110, depending on where you are. The ability to afford a house still is not there because of all the chaos that the geopolitical BS has created for us, inflation, etc. So we still see and continue to see Southwest Florida as a huge demand, right? Now, until that's done, until there's nothing left to do in Southwest Florida and the data doesn't make sense, we'll focus heavily there. But at the same time, we're always looking in the other markets we like. There's parts of Texas that work for us, parts of the Carolinas that work for us. But it's all that data. And it's not free Google stuff. It's not, YouTube University data. It's, you pay for your data and getting good data source, and then good property managers to come in and manage the assets afterwards. So that's why we like Southwest Florida. Plus, it's sun shines up there.
Yeah.
It's sunny. It's warm.
Dave, to your point about I'll formally call it the underwriting process, right? The things that want to make your eyes bleed. I mean, you sound very much, I think, if I'm reading you correctly, sort of that right brain, right? Where left brain is analytical and you're kind of, let's just do it. I'm just going to get in there, get my hands dirty. And you need those opposites as partners, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Speak to the audience about the underwriting on, so when you say Southwest Florida, are we talking Tampa? Are we talking like Clearwater, St. Pete? Like what's...
No, great questions. You've got these pockets. So secondary and tertiary markets, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to be in the MSAs. I don't want to be smack in the middle of Tampa. I don't want to be smack in the middle of Miami. Tampa is done as far as I'm concerned. Some of the secondary and the tertiary markets around Tampa. We got a sweet little deal right now. We own a piece of dirt where I can put 16 higher end rental condos on the market. The density is perfect for 16. And there's just high demand around this part of Rotunda West, which is just south of the Tampa market. So you take a piece of dirt like that. How quickly can you build them? Is the demand still there? So we like that kind of setup. We're heavily invested in Cape Coral, Fort Myers. So the I-41 corridor, they call it, I-90, I-95, I-41 corridor, which runs up the southwest coast of Florida up to Orlando even. But even Orlando, with all of its attractions and Mickey Mouse and everything else, I can't and won't compete with these monstrosities that come in there that can write checks looking for a 3% yield on their money. I'm not gonna compete with those guys. I just can't. So I'm looking for those opportunistic moves within those areas that either get missed or they're not attractive enough. It's nothing more frustrating than being on a sales call and the guy say, my minimum check size is 50 million. I got to go back to the market and find some more stuff, right? And they're out there. They're out there. It's just it's not my wheelhouse. So that's why we like that market specifically.
I know that I deal with a lot of people now and looking at some syndications also in Florida, and maybe enlighten the audience a little bit about the landlord-friendly states and why those are attractive or not.
Yeah. I'll sum it up. It's kind of crass, but it really makes the point, and then you can just drop the mic, right? Massachusetts, where I am, Democratic state, I'll just call it like it is. It would take, on average, anywhere between 8 to 10, if not 12 months to evict a non-paying tenant. At the end of that process, that tenant will probably be owed money by you rather than you owing them. I'm just telling you.
Yep.
Texas, you don't pay your rent for 7 days, the sheriff shows up, kicks in the door, and kicks you out. Now, there's an argument to be made. What about the poor people inside? There's also an argument to be made. What about the investors that invested with the operator that expected a rate of return for the money that they had earned, right? So that really sums it up. It sums it up to the extent of, I want to be in states where business is welcome, where growth is welcome, where access to municipalities is easy, so that we can make decisions quickly, so that we can get these assets under agreement, either get them built or get them repositioned. So that's truly it. It used to be red states, blue states, but we've got way more red states now that will do blue states. I mean, you're going through the same chaos up there that we're going through down here. Oh, and by the way, I don't ever think nor should Canada be a part of the United States of America. I'm just raising
Yeah.
my hand and making my case right now.
Okay.
It's
I appreciate
crazy
that.
what's going on. No,
Yeah, no, it's
no, it's
crazy. I
nuts.
actually just before this podcast, I had Dave Walker, who is the former comptroller of the U.S. government, and he went through
Wow.
3 sitting presidents, I think, or something like that. And I mean,
Yeah.
with to his point, and I'm trying to remain politically agnostic, especially on a podcast, but
Yeah, no,
to
I get it.
me, it's about to me, it's business principles and fiscal responsibility and things like the deficit and spending
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm,
making money where
mm-hmm,
you
mm-hmm.
can, spending money to make money and things like that. So, yeah, what's going on between tariffs and Canada, and we'll see how it plays out. That's all I'll say.
Look, one can only hope that it's a negotiating tactic. We
I
have to.
believe that's what it is. I mean,
We
it's
hope.
pretty classic, but I
Sure,
mean,
we hope. Because if you start slapping 25% on stuff going on in either direction, at the end of the day, I just heard that he wants to slap 25% on steel and aluminum. Now, if you do that, what does that do to the cost of construction? What does that do to everything that's
well,
been underwritten up until this point? So
nobody wins, right? I
nobody
mean, that's
wins, man. Nobody wins. I think what I do like is, you said it, fiscal responsibility. And let's
yeah,
be frank, in the United States of America, remember I said to you, you can spend more money than you earn? Well, that works all the way up the tree, baby. That goes all the way to
it does.
the big house. And the fact that there is some action taking place now, again, maybe a little aggressive, maybe somebody's using a hatchet when they should be using a scalpel. But, when you start looking at the amount of just pure and utter waste, if you and I ran our businesses that way, Garrett, we'd be arrested and we'd be out of business. Period. End of
That's
chat.
my point. That's my point. And up
No more
here in Canada
conversation.
is honestly no different.
Mm.
But let's bring it back. Let's bring it. I could do a whole show on this, and I don't.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Oh
get
man.
you.
Okay. So we're talking about Florida.
Mm.
So Hurricane Milton and Helene. Tell me about that, and if you still have to be cleaning your shorts right now.
Yeah. So here's what's interesting, and I get that question all the time. When Ian came through, we were earlier in our portfolio acquisition, so we didn't suffer any massive consequences of the actual hurricane itself. We
Right.
were in all horizontal underground stuff, parking lot type stuff, and Milton pretty much the same. But what we have had to negotiate and navigate is insurance costs, because
Mhm.
they've been exorbitant. I'm sure you guys got the story of the condo complex that just fell over. It just fell over. It was it wasn't even a hurricane or anything going on. The thing just fell down, for want of a better term. So the good news is that the hurricane code has been beefed up every single time. And as unpleasant as it sounds, those hurricanes take out the old inventory. They just take them out. They can't manage anymore. So it creates a safer building environment and living environment, whether you're owning a single family home or whether you're renting in an apartment complex. But one of the things that we do specifically is we target back from the storm surge. We're not looking for anything on the water, as sexy as it is, as beautiful as it could be. It's not in our wheelhouse to build that kind of construction and still make money for our investors. So when the hurricanes come through, one, we got to navigate the insurance costs. We found multiple insurers on one asset is a play that they're discussing, which is kind of interesting. And then secondly, on top of that, allocation of resources. Where do you want to put your shovel in the ground?
Right.
So that's they're going to happen, man. And what's crazy is the population doesn't decrease after a hurricane. It stabilizes and then increases every single time. So I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, no. So you've talked about shovel in the ground. You've talked about buy and hold assets. What would you say is the focus of of the portfolio?
It's yield. It's yield.
Okay.
It really is. It's yield. If I can look at an asset, whether it's ground up new construction or whether it's being able to do a development work, whatever the case may be. If I'm able to do that and I can get an 8% pref in for my investors or something of that nature, then I'm going to do that deal, right? As long as I can allocate, as long as I can, pro forma it out over 5 to 7 years and the deal makes sense, I'm going to do that deal. I don't care if it's a repositioning. I don't care if it's a ground up new development. It's all about hunting yield with confidence, right? Not
Yeah.
overly getting aggressive on the projections, etc. You staying
Mm.
conservative enough to feel good. So that's where we
Well,
focus our attention.
nobody has a crystal ball, but would you
No, for
say
sure.
that it's majority whether you're doing ground up or you're doing buying and repositioning and lifts, whether it's mainly sort of a long-term play, or do you sell any of these assets? Because a lot of syndications out there are doing sort of the 3 to 5 year thing.
Yeah, yeah, we've pushed past the 3 to 5. I think that's immature. I think it's a little naive to underwrite on a 3 to 5 in this market. We're waiting for a stabilization of interest rates. We do anticipate, an increase in construction costs with everything going on. You've got to underwrite for that. So to get the 12 to 15 to 18% internal rates of return, to get the 12 to 14 cash on cash, prefs at 8. You got to push it out a little while longer. Give me some time to massage these rents, decrease these expenses, right? Get this thing humming, get it turned over and humming, so that we can all exit on a nice profit on the back end. We're underwriting anywhere to 2.5 to a 3 equity multiple. That's what we want to. That's what we want to put in with confidence. So that takes a little bit of time.
Okay. And what's the perfect avatar of an investor for you?
Yeah, accredited investors in the States, it's called a
For sure.
506C Reg D
Yep.
investor. It's interesting. I would tell you my preference is, the family office and the high net worth individual. And it is to some extent, but I got to tell you, man, there's nothing more rewarding than finding my own people and being able to show them some optionality that they didn't know existed. The business
Yeah.
owner who's grinding it out, the restaurant owner, the retired insurance professional, whoever, right? Other
Right.
entrepreneurs who are grinding out in their business and saying, hey, put some capital over here. Don't think about it for 5 to 7 years. Let us work it in sticks and bricks, in real assets, not paper assets, not crypto. Something that we got some control over, and see where we lie, see how the money runs. So those, I like those conversations. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, family offices, lots of money, um, rate checks, but still, I mean, it's not always easy to deal with either, right?
No,
It's a little
no,
bit of a
no.
different conversation, right?
Sure, for sure, for sure. Yeah, yeah. It's goes back to those who control the money, make the rules. And if you're a passive investor, you're not, making the rules, right? I don't care what your opinion is on paint color or design features or any of that stuff. You come in a passive capacity. So there's this push and pull, this yin and yang between the experienced capital. But again, being able to bring in, that business owner accredited doctors,
Yep.
dentists, chiropractors. They're doing their thing every day, hoping that they don't get sued for malpractice, so we can work their money as well.
Yeah. No, for sure. Um, what do you feel Freedom Ventures brings? I mean, there's a lot of syndicators out there, let's be honest,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
there are a lot in the panhandles. I interview a lot of them. I know a lot of them.
Mhm.
You have a unique background. What would you say is your unique advantage if an investor were to like give me your pitch, so to speak, right? Like
Yeah,
why should
look,
somebody work with you guys?
yeah, a guy said to me one time, he goes, "I understand 80% of the deal, Dave, but I'm betting on the jockey and not the horse." Right?
Yeah.
That sums it up. It really does. Um, and I don't ever want to tear somebody else down to build us up. It's not in my DNA to do that. But that being said, there's a lot of people out there who get a syndicating home study course, you know, and then they try and hook themselves to somebody else's wagon and just get in the way of something. I want to see everybody have some skin in the game, right? I want to see some scars. I want to see some battle scars if I'm invested. My partner Walter and I, we talk frequently about, if somebody says to me, "Hey, I've been in this business 10 years and I've seen it all." No, you haven't, right? I want somebody who's been through at least 3 or 4 cycles, who understands failure, right? Who understands loss. I'd have more respect for somebody who's lost 2 or $3 million of investor capital and then come back out and come back strong and got better deals than somebody who's sitting there with confidence with no track record, to the bad or to the good, to the right or the wrong, that says, I got this. No, you don't. None of us do. None of us have got this. So at Freedom Venture, we've probably got, Walter's in for 30. I'm in for 18, 15. Eric, our other partner, he's got another 7 or 8. There's some experience, some longevity there. So you're carrying the ability to look at a landscape and a horizon and say, look, everybody else is going left. I think we might want to go straight or slightly to the right because we see X, Y, Z. COVID took a lot of the Mickey Mouse syndicators out of the game. Did the same thing with a lot of the hard money lenders. I told you I wasn't lending my money. I was lending somebody else's money. That's easy. It's easy when you don't have skin in the game. So I think that's it. It's trajectory, it's longevity. There's a lot of, and I'll end with this. You won't be able to get the CEO on the phone of most other companies, right? You won't be able to. And part of what we like to say and do is that, we're big enough that we can find the right deals, but we're small enough that we can take the phone calls, right? Small enough to be accessible. So I think that's a separator too.
Yeah, well, to your point about turning left or right, I mean, the fact that you just explained why you guys prefer a slightly longer hold, every other
Yeah.
syndicator, that's why I asked you that question, are in that 3 to 5 years. And then now they've made promises. Imagine 3.5, 4 years in, the interest rates, there's another election coming up. The asset hasn't recovered yet. And now you're really stretching and people want their
Mm-hmm.
money back. And you
Mm-hmm.
haven't set their expectations
Mm-hmm.
properly
Mm-hmm.
because you didn't
Mm-hmm.
know the market.
That's
Or you
right.
paid 10 grand for a syndication course. I'm sorry, I'll call them out too.
Yeah.
And you've never done it before, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a hard
I,
price to pay.
the guys that crack me up right now are the guys that are teaching everybody how to be a fund manager, right? Be a fund manager. And I'm like, are you kidding me, dude? Stop it. Right? Stop it.
Yeah.
Just stop. Stop it. You
Yeah. It's
pariah, you
irresponsible.
bandit.
It's
Stop it.
irresponsible. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's
And you wonder why the federal agencies are always knocking on the doors of guys. You know what I mean? You got
yeah.
to play the
Well, they
game
wouldn't
by the way
exist.
it's laid out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They wouldn't exist if
Yeah.
people weren't getting hurt.
Yeah.
So,
For sure.
couple more questions before we end here.
Yeah.
You've made it from, again, wholesaling, flipping, short-term, really small multifamily buy and holds. What would you say is the biggest piece of advice to make that leap? Because I think everybody who gets into real estate goes into it hoping that they can scale into multifamily.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, you just used the magic word, hope. Hope is not a business strategy. It's not. It's not. Everyone that I've ever coached, Garrett, I always say to them, there is something special about you, right? Not I'm special, but there's a skill. My mom said I'm special. No, not that. No, there's a skill set. I don't care whether you're 18 or 68. What do you have that you can bring to this party that can accelerate what we want to do as a group, right? Whether
Right.
it's you learning how to be a multifamily investor, whether it's bringing money to my business, or what is it that you have? And 99%, and this is ridiculous to state, but it's true. 99% of the people I ask them, what do you want? And what skills do you have? They can't answer it, man. They can't answer the question.
I want to be a millionaire in 6 weeks.
No, stupid. You can't fix stupid, right?
Right. Right.
What do you want? What most people really want is some freedom from worry, from fear, from insecurity, from lack of value. And if we can figure out what those things are, let's reverse engineer into that, right? Is it time? Do you want more time? Do you want your money working harder? And if you can answer those questions, now, if you're in the business yourself or you want to learn the business or be a part of the business, then identify what that skill set is that you have and bring that into the business. Once you do that, you can then step away and say, okay, I want to live on passive cash flow.
Yep.
Well, maybe you don't have enough time to learn the business. So bet on the jockey, not on the horse. You got a shot at it, right? So
Well, there's somebody had said this, and I'm probably a gazillion people have said it, but you can, like, there's real estate investors. So you either want to invest in real estate or be a real estate investor. Which one are you, right?
yeah,
And that's basically the difference between getting your hands dirty and, like you said, toilets and different things
trash
like
and
that.
tenants. Yeah,
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 there you go, the
yeah.
three T's, right?
The three
Or,
T's, the one liner.
just, yeah,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
putting your money somewhere. So now you're a real estate investor, but passively,
yeah,
and you have to
yeah,
decide
yeah.
what your skill set is and what your tolerance is, right?
And I would recommend that if you're going in for a passive capacity, then invest with somebody who's dealt with tenants, toilets, and trash, who still has a couple of calluses, who knows that the frost line is 4 feet down in Boston. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like, know some stuff, So,
yeah, yeah, no, for sure. All right. So I always like to end every podcast with a question. Ask every guest the same question. I want to hear what you have to say. So, Dave, this is the Investing to Win podcast. How do you define success, and what does winning look like for you?
so good. It's not zeros in the bank account. It's not. Success is defined for me by the appreciation of my wife and kids, to be honest with you, man. Not just them appreciating me, but me appreciating them, right? Do I have the ability to be present with my family? Because I've fought a lot of demons in my life, man, a lot of
Mhm.
demons. And if I can slay the dragon at the door and then walk into the house afterwards and be there, I think that's a definition of success. Because I'll end with this: when I went back to England, I took my family back to the projects that I grew up in, and it was about a 550 to 600 square foot brick box on a housing estate that was attached to all of the other brick boxes. Today, I'm blessed to live in a 7,000 square foot house, right? So
Yep.
don't ever forget where you come from. And guess what? My house is not my definition of success. The joy that it brings my kids, I think that is. So that's it for me. That and my faith. That and my faith. And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's all him anyway. I just showed up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I give it upstairs at the end of the day. So
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well said. I do everything for my family as well, and just anything you can do to create those memories, and that's what you've done.
mm,
So congratulations
mm.
on your
Yeah,
success.
thanks, brother. Appreciate you.
All right, thanks for coming on the podcast.